Nathan, thank you. And good morning, everyone, and welcome to the October meeting of the Criminal Justice Committee. We do remain under modified meeting rules in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. I would remind everyone present and publicly to continue to physically distance and wear a mask and protect yourself and others. Just a reminder of the public comment rules. Because of the unprecedented logistical and public health challenges presented by COVID, public comment will proceed as follows. Only written public comment will be allowed. Live or in-person comment will not be permitted. Today's agenda does not include a voting matter, but we will accept public comment through the end of this meeting. However, we will not require the customary 30-minute recess period at the beginning. Public comment can be submitted electronically using the e-public comment form available at council.nola.gov/meetings. Only fully completed online forms will be considered. Only one comment per agenda item. Comments will be read aloud in a normal speaking voice. The moderator will discontinue when it exceeds 2 minutes. Any person seeking an accommodation as a result of a disability or any other circumstance, please contact our Council Chief of Staff, Paul Harang. Paul's email is paul.harang@nola.gov. That's HARANG, harang@nola.gov. Any public comment not read aloud and due to time will be available to the public and will be shared with all committee members. Nathan, will you now read the full agenda for us? Thank you, Nathan. 2020, no matter how you look at it, has been a tough pill to swallow. I describe it as all curves and no breaks. And we are not out of the woods yet. One truly bright spot that's really a story of how New Orleans has come together time and time again is that our people from all sectors looked at the tragedy playing out in the world and have leaped into action as New Orleanians typically do. So many who have not been in the game joined in to do their part and make us better. And those who have been performing their own work with their own organizations have created some very, very strong coalitions with others in the pursuit of the collective good for our city. You will absolutely see that in our presenters today. We know that you cannot achieve public safety without attacking public health on a parallel path. In a moment, you're going to hear a thoughtfully conceived, nourished proposal put together by young people that identifies where policymakers should place their support and energy. My team and I have been privileged to join the coalition for strategy sessions and have been very, very impressed by the work, by the knowledge and the attention to detail. I am really, really excited about this panel of presenters, which includes decades of experience in public safety, policy, organizing, and art. The group spans across generations and is a solid collaboration of respected organizations. To kick us off, I want to welcome the chair of the Coalition for Community Connection and newly appointed member of the Jerome Big Duck Smith Justice System Advisory Committee, Brianna Thompson, who will introduce our panel. Good afternoon.
Hello, Councilmember Williams. Thank you for having us. I'm really excited to be presenting today. So first off, I want to thank all of you for having us. I want to thank all of you who participated in our research actions earlier this year. You really helped us out in beginning to develop the NERS ideology. Before we get into introductions of all of our coalition members that are on the call, I want to thank all of the businesses and organizations that are supporting us, including the Living School, the Black School, Compost Now, 826 New Orleans, I Love New Orleans, Zot's Cafe, Dillard University Center for Racial Justice, Sci-Hi, RRA, People's Assembly, NOLA Heat and Me, Loyola University, Waterwise Gulf South, New Orleans Youth Coalition, Father's Heart LLC, WHIV, XR NOLA, Decarcerate Louisiana, People Strike, Rolling with Milia, Thrive New Orleans, The Movement, MACNO, Thrive Ninth Ward Community Center, Lucerne Law LLC, Pont Productions LLC, New Corp Inc., Global Warming, Good and Full Enterprise, Crescent Care, Alternate Roots, Sprout NOLA, Crown Community Garden, Arch Street Inc., Charlene's Beauty Supply, Broadmoor Improvement Association, Soul, Boxes by Bree, For the Horticulture, Glory Gardens, Them People Productions, Isaiah Institute, and Icons for Peace. I know that was a lengthy list, so I try to read it as quickly as possible. I also want to thank all of the 200 plus people who responded to our call to action and have committed to watching this presentation either now or later via the YouTube link. So without further ado, I would like to first introduce myself and then pass the mic to all of my compatriots in the Coalition for Community Connection. I'm Brianna Thompson. I'm a New Orleans native and graduate of Xavier University of Louisiana. I am a carpenter, welder, painter, visual artist, teacher, activist, and I also recently started Boxes by Bree in response to food insecurity when I lost my gigs due to the shutdown for COVID-19.
Hi, my name is Crystal Sims Cameron. I'm a recently returned native of New Orleans. I'm a cultural insights and innovation consultant by trade, the founder of Incognition LLC, where I help my clients connect with underserved consumers, including African-American, Latinx, and LGBTQ communities. I'm the co-founder of Them People Productions, where we create events and programming that provide safe spaces for joy, grief, and connecting among Black, Indigenous people of color. And I'm the founder of For the Horticulture, started during COVID-19, where we are reigniting the culture of backyard gardening in the Black community in response to food insecurity.
Peace and blessed afternoon to everybody. I am Charmisha Baker, Charm Baker, the Director of Student Life at Living School, located in New Orleans East. I am the former founding Director of Curriculum and Instruction at the Travis Hill Schools, located in the former Youth Study Detention, now JJIC, as well as the founding lead arts coordinator at Travis Hill OJC, formerly O Orleans Parish Prison. I have 15 years of public education experience, as a community educator, as an artist. I'm a mother of two. I'm a restorative scientist, certified at the graduate level. And I am looking forward to building at the table of solutions with you all today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Reedy Brooks. I am a native New Orleanian and the mother of two, one of whom came into this world during this pandemic. By trade, I am an urban farmer and a garden teacher and the founder of Glory Gardens. I center my work in tying land, health production, and management techniques in urban agriculture to community health advocacy and ecological stewardship initiatives. Being rooted in New Orleans has equipped me with the value of cooperation, resilience, and conservation. And my work with the CCC and the Nourish model is motivated by my desire to pour into the people of New Orleans to honor how much has been poured into me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Stewart, activist and organizer from Reserve, Louisiana, now live in the New Orleans area. Just started a company, so I'm excited about that. And I also work as program coordinator for the Movement nonprofit, which operates in St. John the Baptist Parish with a central focus on connecting students to community, relationship building, educational development, and also talent and gift development. Happy to be here with you guys.
I'm Joe Gibbons. I'm the director of Isaiah Institute, and I've been privileged to work with this young coalition, and I will say more about our work with them in the next few minutes.
Peace, my name is Cecilia C.C. Givens. I'm a New Orleans educator since 2004, teaching visual arts, martial arts, and ASL at University, and art at Art Institute of Boston at Lesley. Been teaching here and pouring into kids since 2004, and presently I'm working at the Living School in the East, and I'm teaching mental artistship, and I'm happy to be among all of you.
Hey, y'all. My name's Gaines Owen. I'm a community leader with my wife. For the past 2 years, we've run a nonprofit organization called Father's Heart. Its purpose is to help educate and bring love and support to kids and families in forgotten and low-income communities in our city. And excited to be part of this coalition.
Right. And
Sunny?
I think Sunny is, oh, there she is.
Hello, family. I am Sunny Patterson, poet, facilitator, spirit worker. I have 20 years, a little over 20 years plus of public school and private school teaching. Yeah, and a whole bunch of other stuff that we'll get to a little bit later.
Hi, I'm Angel Givens. I spent 10 years working as a community organizer for All Congregations Together, and a couple of years as the director of Louisiana Interfaiths Together, a statewide organization of a national network, and have really enjoyed working with this group.
You're on mute, Brianna.
I think our last person is Dr. Turner.
My apologies. I didn't know I was going to have to introduce myself. Greetings to everybody on the council, as well as all our contemporaries. I'm Brian Turner. I'm a professor of psychology at Xavier University and a clinical psychologist here in practice. I'll be supporting, but I also have class, so I'm probably going to get off of here in a minute.
Right, and with that, we are the Coalition for Community Connection. I will share my screen to start our presentation. All right, so we are, sorry about that. Okay, we are the Coalition for Community Connection. And you just met our team. And the Coalition for Community Connection is an intergenerational cooperative of community leaders. We are educators, artists, entrepreneurs, public servants, faith leaders, and youth, creating holistic, human-centric solutions to issues of violence, food insecurity, and displacement in New Orleans' underserved neighborhoods. We believe in the power of right relationships between community members to the environment and within oneself to repair what decades of trauma and disenfranchisement have broken. We've been working for the last 4 months to develop a solution to the many issues that we will state later on in this presentation. And out of that came Nourish. Nourish combines elements of restorative justice, the healing power of nature, cooperative economics, and an emphasis on trauma-informed approaches within mental health to reweave the social safety net that protects neighbors in need from additional trauma and helps them to reach their desired life outcomes.
Our vision is a New Orleans where Black and Brown communities have the equity, resources, and power to shape futures of their own design, filled with joy and free from all forms of violence. Our mission is to reclaim abandoned properties and repurpose existing spaces in underserved communities as dedicated sites for healing, relationship building, and economic growth that supersede violence and crime to serve Black youth, families, elders, and allies for generations to come.
At this time, I speak to what New Orleans needs.
Having some trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Perfect. At this time, I'll speak to what New Orleans needs now and why we can't wait to address community harm. My interest in repairing community harm really started to center itself in my life and in my work as we sought out to develop a full educational institution inside of the youth study detention under the consent decree, as well as my work inside of Orleans Parish Prison. What occurred to me is that young people as young as 12 and at that time working from 12 to 24 in and throughout the tiers and in amongst those spaces, it occurred to me that these young people, this was the first time in these sort of last chance spaces in incarceration that they'd start to unpack not only the harm that they were accused of causing or had caused, but that this was the first time that they had begun to unpack the harm that they themselves had experienced, the harm that had been done to them. And so what restorative sciences teaches us is that when harm occurs between two parties, it does not start and end between those two parties, i.e. a victim and an offender, but what harm actually does is that it spirals outward into the community. It usually impacts the family unit first, and then spirals outwardly to witnesses and bystanders, which is the reason why community members are hesitant to or will not at all identify harm doers in their community for fear of retaliation, and often choose to take matters of justice into their own hands. But then the harm continues to spiral, right? It spirals right into the schools. And my lived experiences have been that the schools are typically, even though the harm has occurred in the family unit and witnesses and bystanders have also been impacted by the harm, that the schools then are also impacted by the harm. And virtually everyone in our community is then impacted by the harm, re-triggered by the traumatic event. And oftentimes this harm is internalized because there are no healing spaces, nor is there a healing model like Nourish that says that healing, just like harm, can spiral outward into the community. And so we must address the spiral of community harm and break the cycle of this vicious cycle of community harm. And we believe that we can do this by reinforcing our neighborhoods, our prioritized neighborhoods with green spaces, with edible landscapes, with the creation of a lighthouse that incorporates evidence-based approaches to improve public safety, public health, and life outcomes.
So I'm gonna take this moment to share how the harm spiral has affected me. About a year and a half ago, my cousin and his fiance were shot and killed in front of their children. And the piece of the story that affected me the most, and is a large reason as to why I'm working with the Coalition for Community Connection to instate Nourish as a harm reduction principle in our public safety system, is because the officers that responded to that call did not wipe the blood off of their children's faces. And I just am stuck thinking, like, what if there was a co-responder there with them that could have tended to the trauma that those children just experienced? Or what if, you know, that community had access to mental health to where that person didn't feel like they needed to harm my cousin and his fiance, especially in front of their children. So that's why I so vehemently support this initiative.
So research tells us that leading causes of death have remained constant since 2010, with heart disease and cancer being the most common for all residents in New Orleans, regardless of race and sex. And that's according to the New Orleans Health Department. Currently, more than 1 in 5 New Orleans residents are food insecure. Residents are unable to afford basic needs such as food and shelter. New Orleans residents consistently speak to the critical role that economic stability plays in improving health and quality of life. The financial burden on the city's residents includes the expense of healthy food and is compounded by the lack of sustainable employment, making it essentially impossible to afford basic needs. The food insecurity rate in Orleans Parish in 2017 was 22% higher than that for Louisiana or the United States. And it left an estimated of over about 85,000 people food insecure. Over 1 in 4 of these individuals live above the federal poverty level and receive minimal federal nutrition assistance. Residents report a daily feeling of being overwhelmed and hopeless due to being forced to make decisions that have a negative impact on their health. Research also tells us that being exposed to violence is linked to various negative health outcomes, including increased BMI scores and obesity due to reduced levels of activity associated with anxiety, PTSD, and depression. The threat of violence alone causes chronic stress. Mental health was identified in the Community Health Survey as the top health issue residents are most concerned about, and violence was named as the top barrier to health. Increasing access to mental health services and providers could aid in addressing the rates of substance abuse, drug poisoning deaths, and growing stigma towards mental illness and its criminalization. The high rate of unsheltered homeless per capita, as well as the trauma and stress associated with the incidence of crime, which is increasing. New Orleanians also expressed the value of parks and places for exercise as top assets for the health, for health in their neighborhoods. And it's estimated that while 80% live within a 10-minute walk to a park, obesity and diabetes are still the most concerning health issues to residents aside from mental health. Those engaged in this survey cite being concerned with violence and maintenance of park infrastructure as the major barriers to addressing these health issues. Therapeutic horticulture programs have been shown to help diverse at-risk populations improve psychosocial outcomes. Through his work with children in 2009, Mujuri postulated that self-awareness, empathy, patience, and trust could all be fostered through gardening. If you're anxious, or if you're suffering from depression, or if you're having intrusive thoughts because of trauma, it's really hard to focus on academic material. This is a quote from the director of programming at Skyline Academy, which is an inclusive preschool in Denver, Colorado. Overall, more New Orleanians are insured and have access to primary care. However, access to dental, behavioral health, and women's health and other specialty services is still pretty limited for some, especially populations with increased barriers to care due to language, citizenship, income, or incarceration. These people may receive lower quality of care, delay needed care, or not access care at all. Public safety has traditionally been considered the domain of law enforcement, but we've now come to understand that you can't have public safety without the public, as asserted by the director at Newark Community Street Team. Police staffing experts that have worked with NOPD have found that officers across the country consistently report a low morale due to a sense of needing to respond to calls that are outside of their training. And there's also a perceived lack of support, which is an illusion created by the police departments not having the autonomy and data to adequately use the staff that they have, asserts Alexandra Weiss, who is a police staffing analyst. Recruiting more police is proven to lead to more arrests, but does not effectively lead to a sustained decrease in violent crime. Research tells us that being exposed to violence is linked to negative health outcomes and negative educational outcomes, and that race is shorthand for a set of life probabilities that includes the likelihood to experience incarceration, poverty, and the likelihood of being abused or killed by the police, as well as the likelihood of being killed by various diseases, including COVID-19.
And now we'll hear a testimonial.
Something people in New Orleans just don't feel. Not with the police, not with themselves, not even with their own family. What if there was an alternative? Something different than handling the situation on your own or running to the police and being called a rat, or not even being safe when you feel like you walk into that police station because you know that they just see you as somebody from the street. Nurture. A way to nurture your community, nurture yourself. A safe place for you to go, or for your family, or for even your friends to go and feel that they are safe. A place where you can go and know that you have a meal there, you have people that will understand you. That you have people that you could go and talk to instead of just going to violence or going to the police. Because to keep it real, police, people, they don't understand you. But there is people that will come, that will be here for you. Because there's schools, there's police stations, fire stations, any place you go, they can never really understand you. When you sit face to face and talk to someone that went through the same thing you went through, or talk to somebody that understands you, that makes a difference. To know that you can walk in there and you can see all these familiar faces and you can say, man, I'm just not feeling it today. And they understand that. That's what nurture does. That's the lighthouse.
So now I want to share with you guys a little bit about the background and objectives and how we came to develop what is the Nourish model. So many of our current social justice campaigns are centered around an immediate need to humanize folks who have been systemically dehumanized in our culture. Our most fundamental need as human beings is connection. We need to commune with nature and bond with other people to protect our mental and physical health. Feelings of disconnection can cause anxiety, loneliness, and anger. Those emotions trigger physiological changes that underlie issues like hypertension and obesity. Reestablishing meaningful connections can build folks' capacity for dealing with the ups and downs of life. For communities experiencing social stressors, including poverty, food instability, and racial injustice, the existence of a social safety net, sustainable resources, and neighbors who know and care for them can mean the difference between succumbing to circumstances or catapulting beyond them.
Good evening. I'm speaking to you today from New Orleans East. I would like to see vacant lots in our city turned into community centers. A center where youth can come together and do things that they enjoy, so they would have other options than just running the streets. The center could be a place where youth of all ages come from different backgrounds, come together and just spread love and positive energy. Overall, this center would be a small step in controlling the violence in our community today. Thank you for your time.
The community green spaces we envision are more than just parks and playgrounds. They are evergreen resources for connecting community members with nature, healthy food, and with each other. Increased access to healthy food and proximity to green space reduce the emotional and social triggers that often precede the crimes that distress many New Orleans neighborhoods. The job of the Lighthouse is to literally leave the light on for vulnerable individuals and families in the communities that they serve. Trusted and trained community members are there to address needs in a safe space. Relationships with public servants that are rooted in mutual respect and common goals, rather than in authority, reinforce the social safety nets that notice a hungry child, refer an out-of-work parent, or find resources for mental health needs before they become public issues. So our proposal for the use and development of hyper-local sites for accessing social services and growing healthy foods within underserved New Orleans communities is a bid for achieving these 4 things: co-creating sustained opportunities for personal expression, holistic wellness, cultural preservation, and economic growth with members of underserved communities; reducing the harm of stress and exposure to triggering events for public servants, such as police and EMS, by providing community access to service providers that are better equipped to address mental health-related emergency calls; decrease food instability and health disparities in vulnerable populations by making fresh produce more physically and financially accessible; and reducing the effects of stress on susceptible individuals, including our youth, elders, underemployed adults, and the formerly incarcerated via productive interaction with nature and caring relationships with public servants.
I believe that we should have 6 to 7 lighthouses in each community in our city of New Orleans. I believe this will give our young men a chance to heal and be realistic with themselves throughout the poverty situations that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. I believe that this opportunity would be great for more innovative and creative things that can be more useful to young Black men, young Black women in the communities of our city.
Why do I think this program is beneficial and important to the community? I would say just being in myself, being in domestic violence, abusive relationships in my past, you sometimes get to a point where you may not want to call the police. You know, you may not want to call your family members, you may not want to call your friends, you may want to keep that private, but you still want to get help. Sometimes you may just need help just figuring out what you want to do without being attacked by people who love you and just want you to do better, but not really trying to go in depth of how you're mentally trying to figure this out. So I think that's very important to the community, to the men and the women, and the children who need help, because sometimes, you know, children live adult lives as well, and they need help. I would say being in those type of relationships, I would say now looking forward, it's just certain things that I wouldn't want to partake in, and that would be a chauvinistic individual, a narcissistic individual, and a controlling individual. And anytime you're dealing with those type of people, you know, problems are going to come at hand in a relationship, whether it's an intimate relationship or a relative relationship with family or friends. And I just think this is a good program, you know, because you know you get yourself in situations and you just need help sometimes. And like I said before, you don't want to call your mama, you know, you don't want to call the police, you know. You don't want to call your friends because you done went to this person, you went back to this person, or your friends never liked the person, or you know, you may find yourself with it could be, you know, sometimes it may not even be somebody you're intimate with. It could be like a group of people that you hang with all the time and you just can't get away from them people, and you need to come to a safe haven place like this. And I think asking for this would definitely allow structure in the community where people can feel safe to wanna help. Also, when I had somebody I was dealing with, they did the counseling. You know, sometimes I think counseling is very beneficial. Sometimes you may be, how they say, the victim or the person that's causing the problem. What is that called? The victim or I don't know, the bad guy. If you're the bad guy and you want to become a good guy, they will have services for you as well. That's the point I was trying to make it at. But definitely counseling helps if you want to receive it and you want to take heed to what you're being taught. And if you want to learn to break bad habits within self, I think it's definitely beneficial. So yeah, I'm definitely with it. You know, I'm for it. Like I said, like anything in my life, no matter what it's about, it's funny that they asked me to say this because anything in my life, I don't like to go on what I think I would do. I always go on what I've always experienced. Unfortunately, I've experienced these things and I can speak on it firsthand on being abused and wanting to get help from other people, and sometimes you just don't have that outlet to get it. So, yeah, we need to get this. Let's go. Mm-hmm.
So the following case studies support the Nourish model by either lending examples of precisely what we're trying to do or some version of it. So the Newark Street Team was born out of the idea that policing and public safety are not the same thing. And the Newark Street Team is an organization of recruited former gang members developed as a grassroots response to the recommendations from the Department of Justice. The team performs interventions after violent acts are committed, helping community members to recognize and reconcile the harm that was done before retaliation is initiated. Mayor Baraka took advantage of the existing consent decree to initiate citywide reforms that address crime as a public health issue before getting the police involved. The Dahlia campus in Denver, Colorado is the Dahlia Campus for Health and Wellbeing, and it provides a model for a holistic and comprehensive approach made possible by a 3-year commitment to community outreach prior to development, which resulted in the following sustained impacts. They offer comprehensive mental health and diverse rehabilitative services for adults, families, and youth, an on-site farm, a dental clinic, and a high quality and inclusive preschool within walking distance. The takeaway from this, the key takeaway, I believe, is the co-responders program, which pairs mental health clinicians with first responders in response to issues such as overwhelmed police forces, the recidivism issue, and the criminalization of the mentally ill. Police officers demanded the expansion of the co-responder program, and in 2018, due to 99% of the contacts being diverted to treatment or other services as opposed to being in jail or prison. The program brought clinicians out of the office and allowed them to become familiar with community members and situates them to initiate preventative care. This model has also been replicated since 2018. This model has been replicated throughout Denver, and the City Council of Amherst, Massachusetts is considering replicating this model in their locality as well. Aglanta, the urban food forest at Brown Mills, is Atlanta's first community food forest and new park model for the city of Atlanta. They accomplished this by implementing policy changes such as the City of Atlanta Urban Agriculture Ordinance, and which provides support for residents interested in growing and stewardship. through programs like Atlanta's Grow a Lot pilot program, 8 new urban farms and gardens, and the largest modern community food forest in the nation were created in low-income, low-access food desert areas. Each fruit tree planted on these vacant spaces could produce up to 300 pounds of fruit a year for the residents in these low-income, low-access areas, and the 775 fruit trees planted in targeted low-income, low-access areas could provide a total of over 5 million pounds of fresh, affordable food for residents over the next 50 years. The Grows a Lot pilot program proved to be successfully impactful on the issue of economic stability. For residents, with 40 residents participating in vocational training programs. 100% of the pilot teams reported that they saved money on groceries, and 10% of the pilot teams actually generated revenue via an entrepreneurial venture during the 2018-2019 growing season. And lastly, we have the Residential Rehabilitation Center for Court-Involved Youth, where a case study on horticultural therapy was conducted. The objective of this case study was to develop a recreational and leisure activity modality to increase landscaping and horticultural job skills and to enable restorative justice for their criminal behaviors by growing food to donate to local shelters and community kitchens. 73% of participants agreed or strongly agreed that they got along better with the staff because of the gardening project, reporting enhanced communication with staff and seeing the staff as people who cared about them, and seeing staff at the correctional facility as actual role models. They were all mentioned as being benefits of working in the garden. The youth participants thought working in the garden with family could actually improve the relationships with their family once they returned home. The researchers in the Rehabilitation Center staff in the current study believe that enhancing the gardening project by allowing the participants to deliver and serve the produce that they grew to pantries and kitchens emphasized the value of their contribution in ways that gardening alone would not have done.
Allen, a local artist, arts educator, and writer and illustrator of children's books. Born and raised in New Orleans, I can see the need for initiatives such as the Lighthouse. I've seen a number of organizations come through with great vigor and never really see that flicker develop into a flame because they're working individually. But at the Lighthouse, we have an opportunity for people to come together with their efforts to truly bring forth the spirit of healing to the city of New Orleans. As an art educator, I see the need for children to have an outlet for creativity, not only in the summer, but throughout the entire year, and who is also in need of the support that are offered by the Lighthouse are the parents. Getting kids involved, having parents engaged, having support for kids and families with issues should not be seasonal and only left up to the local school system. It should be an initiative that can be powered by community leaders who have a passion and an integrity for the work that they do. And I believe that the Lighthouse is the force and the beautiful spirit that will bring forth everything that we need to heal our city here in New Orleans from the violence and other injustices that occur as a result of not having a safe space. The Lighthouse is definitely that place.
So we want to share a little bit about how we have developed and designed the method and strategy of the Lighthouse and Green Spaces to work together. We know that our evolving strategy is going to continuously be informed by our listening campaigns, neighborhood advisory committees, and youth-led community engagement. But we do have a holistic methodology that's outlined here to create this living, connective, and responsive organism that dwells among the people and is informed by their needs. So lighthouses will be staffed by social workers, mental health counselors, mentors, conflict mediators, legal counselors, and career coaches, and it's located within the neighborhood green spaces. These green spaces will include edible landscapes and recreational areas that are designed and programmed specifically to facilitate multi-generational community engagement. With strategic relationships to nearby schools, clinics, businesses, community centers, churches, nursing homes, and childcare providers, each Nourish Center will be an anchor tethered to the various neighborhood buoys and harboring close relationships and wraparound services that keep community members afloat during turbulent times. Our Nourish Lighthouse staff and contractors will run youth mentoring programs, educate in and maintain the garden and edible landscape, connect unemployed community members with job opportunities, and continue to facilitate mediation when conflicts arise. All the staff members will live within a specified radius of the lighthouse, be a recent member of the local community, or committed to spending a set number of hours participating in community building activities outside of their work. This will help build the trust and rapport that's necessary for our model of community engagement to root deep, ensuring that neighbors feel safe, sharing their needs, challenges, and hopes with the people who are dedicated to building their capacity towards self-sufficiency and sovereignty. This will also reduce the likelihood of violent cycles of conflict and incidences of harm and the need for police presence. Equipped with open air classrooms, public gathering spaces, and perennial produce, Nourish neighborhood green spaces will be hubs for community restoration that prioritize the relational, emotional, and physical health of the neighbors that they serve.
We believe that the lighthouse would be a hub of light, of love, of strength, of peace, of power, and of ambition. Because in its undertaking, we do more than just say we hope we can save our communities, but that we, esteemed council, can, that we must, and that we have a plan, in fact, to transform New Orleans East, and that we are rejoicing when the fruit of healing spirals outward, impacting our entire beloved city of New Orleans. Looking at the map here, you see a current Living School campus, and the Lighthouse campus would actually be here at number 2. That's the old Schwegmans building. It's 110,000 square feet. It's been vacant for 17 years. It's currently a hub for drug use, for illegal dumping and other harmful activities. And adjacent to it sits 35 acres of overgrown land, untouched for 17 years, 30 of which is city owned. And it's currently a hub for harmful activities. But again, we see this old Schwegmans and the 35 acres of overgrown land as a thriving ecosystem that can serve the Nourish mission as we have strategized to cultivate holistic health for all of our relations. Individuals, communities, and environments are interconnected in a design that exceeds the greatest standards for functionality, safety, beauty, comfort, and well-being, and challenges the precedent of how safe havens look, feel, and function in our cities. As a community school, we're already doing the work to heal, connect, learn, grow, nurture, and produce real-world work of great value, as well as to care beyond the classroom for our community's most basic needs and highest needs. But what makes this site ideal for a Living School Lighthouse is its proximity to public transportation at Sheff, at Dwyer, Morrison, and Haynes. Its proximity to adjacent complementary services, commercial and residential. Its proximity to ecosystem factors like water and wildland. And some of the features of this safe haven would include sustainable agriculture, a nursery, greenhouse, farm, food forest, aquaponics, and silvopasture. Notably, no high school in New Orleans has implemented the statewide agri-science program since before Hurricane Katrina. So reviving this program now, when the need for fresh food and the urgency for food security, as well as the pathways to solutions, couldn't be more evident. Also, this lighthouse would contain a food grocery cooperative in response to the needs and desires of New Orleans East residents who echoed a resounding cry for grocery and fresh produce alternatives to Walmart on Bullard and the gas stations directly to Councilwoman Cindy Nguyen and the regular committee meetings she hosted throughout fall 2019 and up until COVID restrictions were implemented. A credit union solely for the purpose of teaching financial literacy is health, and establishing value-added community businesses through micro-loaning for homegrown enterprises who aspire to sow back into their communities as soon as high school graduation and beyond. Safe, youth-centered transitional housing, boarding, as our current options are not safe and they often re-expose our youth to sexual abuse, and they do more harm than good. Health clinics staffed by medical, dental, vision, and alternative healing professionals that center women's health to combat the staggering rates of Black maternal mortality rates and infant mortality rates in our community. Childcare, indoor and outdoor athletic facilities, water access for fishing, all of this land, abundant land, repurposed as a lighthouse.
In the desire, the Nourish model of community revitalization will enhance the capacity of an existing community center and green spaces as health and wellness hubs. These hubs include will include a network of urban agriculture sites, edible parks designed to respond to the distinct and evolving health, wellness, and economic needs of the communities that they located within. Essential to this model is the structured and sustainable collaboration among organizations, which will improve the efficacy and potency of existing and future community health initiatives. The Giving Hope Community Center will be the pilot lighthouse and edible park. The building is shared with the Daughters of Charity, or the DePaul Community Health Center, and the adjacent community center means that there's an existing capacity for healthcare programming to be implemented as a priority. Workforce development programming can also be immediately implemented at the community center through the process of land development and green infrastructure demonstration. At the community center, there's an existing green infrastructure education cohort that runs consistently throughout the year. And through a partnership with the Delgado Sidney Collier Community Campus, a horticultural technical program can be reinstituted. And there's also an existing capacity for childcare through a strategic partnership with Delgado. Immediately across the street from the community center, there is 3 acres of wild lands that has a wetlands. And I've proposed that it be used as an edible public space, such as an educational urban farm with recreational facilities and a space dedicated to green infrastructure and education, thereby increasing access to the green sector as it is emerging in New Orleans. The Estates, formerly known as the Desire Project, through a partnership with the DePaul Community Health Clinic, would allow us to galvanize the established relationships and data sets of the pool of social workers and caseworkers that serve the residents there. Adjacent to the Estates and across the street from the community center is a lot owned by the City of New Orleans, which would increase the acreage available for edible public land use. There's a network of churches in the area, and through a partnership with Desire Carver Baptist Church, which is ongoing, they're willing to donate multiple lots in the area with an express interest in community garden spaces as venues for education and community gardening as a site for rehabilitative community service. Carver has also expressed an interest in reinstituting the agricultural or horticultural technical program due to the issue of students being able to get into college. They have very high college acceptance rates, but like Delgado, they're having an issue with students being overworked by having to take on part-time jobs that induce too much stress, and it renders them as less likely to actually complete their degree, and they drop out. Each star on the map designates additional land owned by a partner or stakeholder that could host urban agriculture or edible park programming. The arrow designates the more accessible of the 2 corner stores in the area where residents and participants can sell produce and value-added products through the Good to Go program.
Connecting and protecting our young future leaders, sharing our passion with honorable compassion and concern. We must function daily with an attitude of prevention, approaching our young future leaders with the best of intentions, not to shoot, not to kill. Approach them with intent to enhance their will. We're living in a brain-damaged society. Our solutions must offer a professional variety. Live and let live. Magnify the mind. We must assist them to overcome violence and crime. I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you. Too often, the system is initiating death rather than life. Subliminal promoters of detrimental advice. Most frequently seen on the murderers' TV, solitary confinement so difficult to see. We must function for our youngsters to constantly prevail. Why not save them from a lifetime in jail? Feeding them regression rather than growth. Officers doing harm with the intent to boast. Initiating control and power, causing disgraceful despair. Why not use warmth with patience to spare? I'm talking to you. Beatdowns in prison, first on the streets. Officers being trained how to mistreat. Not appreciating the fact we're all human beings, harmed and killing, eager to be mean. We as the innocent for ignorance to stop. Why be killed by insane cops? Destroying communities and leadership trust. Killing the innocent is often us. Using punishment to its maximum extreme. Illegal procedures, dirty, not clean. Dirty, not clean. Many leaders we have appointed turning their heads, not speaking up for those who are dead. Therefore, let us connect in order to protect. If you're not in the clique, you don't get picked. If you're not in the green, you're not on the team. And it's about those who control education. They insist on controlling the destination. Thank you. Habiballah Salim, build self-esteem so we can complete our dream and then function as a team.
What we are asking for help to do is to nourish New Orleans now. The Coalition for Community Connection has developed this Nourish model as a holistic alternative to increased crime and police presence in vulnerable neighborhoods. Our goal is to cultivate safer, more resilient communities by reinvesting in placemaking and programming that heal traumas and restore relationships. We are asking the New Orleans City Council to apply funds within the NOPD budget to include the Nourish model as an investment in harm reduction and wellness for New Orleans' underserved neighborhoods. And I want to ask our sister Sunny Patterson to offer a reflection on Nourish as well.
Good evening. What just a powerful presentation. Not because I'm a part of this team, but just because it's a powerful presentation. So
you're muted, Sunny.
Oh, I'm still muted. I think they've muted me. I don't.
I'm muted.
You're muted. There we go.
My apologies.
Where do we? Yeah, I almost don't want to say too much because we've said so much. But I'm thinking about, there are a few things that just come to mind. One, just about restoration and what we know about restoration in the midst of ongoing corruption and outright murder, and what that means and what that looks like, because we know a place like New Orleans. What we know for sure is resilience. What we know for sure is recuperation. But most importantly, what we know is a rock solid faith as well. So this model is something else. We started the meeting, Jason Williams started by saying all curves, no brakes, that we leap into action and we still land on our feet, or better yet, we land in our hearts. Public safety, policy, and art. This is how we nourish, how we come together. A litany of lovers, teachers, organizers, gardeners, scientists, and artists working towards and shaping a present and a future that centers those on the margin or behind the bars or below the line. But how do we address harm? Is it the same way we address healing? How do we help create heaven here? Do you believe that that is possible? When the people are committed to serve, who are committed to protect, who don't know what to do with blood-splattered faces? How do we wipe away not just blood or tears, but how do we clear the slate for hearts to thrive when violence prevails, when the system has failed, when the people are pushed and are standing at the edge, and here we are, able to do one of a few things: fly, fall, or be paralyzed by fear. Either way, what we have seen is that our youth are there, listening and leading, wondering and waiting, connecting and creating, lighting the way, and navigating this world with a wand, with a weapon, with a way that pushes us past power policing, but to principle, divine laws that govern us all, where true community is growth, where our gardens are not just groceries, but our trees are well cared for beings who understand and know the fruit of justice, the fruit of love, the fruit of light, the fruit of connectivity, the fruit of divine and expectant hope. And doesn't everything growing deserve to be nourished? This is where we know that nourished is not just a noun, but it's a verb. Just like love. Isn't love both noun and verb? This is what we have come to truly present you. We've given you, yes, all of these other beautiful things. We've told you things that you really already know, that vacant lots have been there for years upon years upon years upon years. But really what we have come to just kind of reiterate, really what we've come to remind you of is love. We've come to remind you of what it means to be nourished in love, what it means to be nourished and steeped in truth, what it means to be nourished and steeped in faith, and what it means to be nourished and steeped in truly what it is that you believe. And if you truly believe in what it is that we have presenting, we've given example after example. Again, these are things that you know, but the reality is that, and the question still remains, what really do you believe deserves to be nourished? And isn't that everything that we've just presented? So I thank you for listening to everything that we've said. I thank you for listening to everything that has just been presented, and everything that you've seen, and just the work that you are already doing on our behalf as well. And because of that, we have to honor you. And also because of that, we know that you have honored us as well, not just by giving a listening ear, but by giving a willing heart for this process, because that's what Nourish is all about. Lifting hearts, lifting lives, and truly coming together and connecting, yes, in community, but also connecting in spirit, in heart, and in truth, and in light. And certainly we know that if we truly come together in that way, oh my gosh, what can New Orleans be? Nothing but just that, a lighthouse, and the lighthouse that we've already presented. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunny. That was beautiful, as always. Before we open this up thank you. Before we open this up for Q&A, I would like to take a moment for some of our supporters to offer up some words.
So good afternoon. And again, I want to thank members of the council for hearing this proposal today. And most of you have had a chance to meet us over the course of the past 4 months or so, as we began to start developing the idea of a coalition that was truly intergenerational and, involving young people and involving those that have been a part of public safety for many years, and those of us who've been organizers. And so you know who's involved, but I just want to make a brief statement on behalf of some of us who've been involved in sort of counseling and working with the development of this coalition. Again, they come from academia, they come from our major universities. You heard from Dr. Turner earlier, Dr. Ashraf Ismail from Dillard University, the new Racial Justice Center, and Kenneth Polite at Campus. We've been involved in this work for a long time, and this statement I want to read on their behalf, states simply that we support the efforts of the coalition to and a proposal that they present here today. We believe that this is an important step in the direction of public safety and developing a comprehensive strategy, a holistic strategy. I think Crystal said earlier that we understand that it's an evolving strategy that will be informed by our continued discussions with members of our communities as we continue to engage them. I want to say on behalf of that group of counselors that we intend to continue our work and our commitment to support the increased involvement of young leaders and citizens in this process, that we will continue our commitment to help this strategy to evolve. And on a personal note, I'll end with this personal note. I'm sorry for the construction work you hear in the background. But on a personal note, I began to see, as Nourish's ideology began to take shape, opportunities for community relationships. I asked that question early on in this process. How do we engage in our bringing peace to our own communities? And the resounding answer to that question was that we really have to reweave the pattern of relationships in our communities. And so when I asked that question, I was reminded of a strategy that we used in the 90s when I directed All Congregations Together, that reweaved the pattern of relationships in churches and police department that resulted in an unprecedented reduction in crime and violence in the city between 1997 and 2002. So we see in this lighthouse model an opportunity for as it's described, a hub for health and wellness. And really, prior to my work with ACT, I was appointed by Dutch Boreal's office as deputy director of the recreation department and worked in recreation. So I see a 21st century concept of community centers that focuses now on some of the things that people and young people especially have been demanding across this country: for wellness, for health, for an appropriate response to those kinds of trauma as they describe it. So with that being said, I just wanted to express the commitment of the group of counselors that continue to work with this group and to share their statement of support.
Thank you, Baba Joe. And with that, we will open it up this forum to all of our council members for comments and questions and answers.
I'll start with a comment, and I'll just want to thank the young people for their thoughtful deliberation on this Nourish plan. We all know that that people, adults, children that are nourished, that have had things poured into them, make better choices than folks that are left uninvested in. it's an interesting parallel between the lack of investment in young people and the lack of investment in community and blight. I find it fascinating that you all looked at New Orleans East and looked at areas that need investment, looked at areas of blight, and are thinking about how to repurpose those so that we can invest in people. And so I stand ready to go to the Capitol with you when you make a trip there, whenever you take a meeting with someone in the private sector, be it for investment in these concepts. This is the front gate of the criminal justice system, setting people up for on-ramps and opportunities rather than setting up for failure and traps. So thank you for this thoughtful presentation. I've had an opportunity to meet with you all on a number of occasions. So let me turn it over to my colleagues. I know Council Vice President wants to weigh in. Helena, then we'll go to Cindy Nguyen, Councilmember Nguyen from the East.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and thank you to all of you for really this very thoughtful and well put together presentation. Just real quick, just so I start, Ms. Patterson, Sunny Patterson, so talented. I'm such a big fan. I love hearing you speak. We did a Fridays with Fran together and you just blew me away. So the fact that you're part of this whole group just really inspires me as well, because I know that you're so passionate about the arts, and I know that the arts would be a big piece of this as well. Ms. Brooks, I'm really impressed by the overall kind of horticulture piece that you're putting together with this. And as Jason mentioned, obviously to get all of this done, it's going to take a local state partnership, a private partnership, partnerships with nonprofits, I'm assuming as well. So Ms. Brooks, can you tell me a little bit more about conversations that you've had with any local universities as far as the horticulture program? You mentioned it briefly, and I may have missed the details on that, because I'm more than happy to try to help you on the state level if any programs need to be reinstated at the secondary school level.
Yeah, thank you for your interest. Through a partnership with Thrive Ninth Ward, which operates out of the Giving Hope Community Center, I've been pursuing conversations with Delgado regarding the revival of their horticultural program. What I do know is that when most of the men and women who come out of Angola and other prisons, when they return home, many of them return home with a license to practice landscaping and horticulture. And I really want to capitalize on that by making sure that there's continued education opportunities for them, and also capitalize, like I said, on the emerging green sector in New Orleans by making sure that we can move those people, create like a very streamlined situation so they can get certified in green infrastructure as well, because as we've seen, that's a pandemic-proof career path. I've also recently completed a certification in sustainable agriculture with Southern University. And I know that the agriculture program at Southern is not running in New Orleans, it's actually in Baton Rouge, but I would love to see the revival of that happening in New Orleans as well.
Got it. Yeah, I really would love to help you with that. And I'll get with you separately if that's okay, so we don't take up a bunch of time and come up with a strategy to see what we can do to get those programs re-engaged at Delgado and at Southern as well. The other thing that I wanted to mention to the group, and I appreciate Ms. Patterson bringing this up, that there is a lot of work on a lot of the different sectors that you touched on that has already started. But look, we all know that clearly it's not enough. But at the same time, I think it's great to put the different groups already working on some areas together with you all, because I think you're going to be, another great big boost for them. One of the people who I'd love to put you with is Dr. Denise Shervington. She's over at Tulane University. She's an MD, she's a doctor, but she's also the CEO for the Institute on Women and Ethnic Studies. And she was she's been a huge visionary when it comes to working on trauma-informed care in our schools. And in fact, she came up with an entire report with her team about what's happening with trauma-informed care in the city of New Orleans, and particular steps that she thinks are really necessary to be implemented in our city. And we've been working with her Jason, ever since we got into this council term's office, so for the past couple of years. So I would love for you all to get engaged with Tulane and with her, because I think that this could create another big partnership. One of the reasons when Joe Givens came by my office and we chatted for a while, one of the reasons I was so excited about the work that you're doing in your presentation, because it is all about building momentum about the things that we really care about that are part of this Nourish presentation that you put before us. So it's all about creating those additional partnerships. So where there might already be some work started, you all can come and help, but where you all are leading, maybe there's other groups that can help you keep paving the way forward. And as Jason said as well, more than happy to help you in Baton Rouge. Spent 8 years in the Louisiana legislature, still have a lot of connections, and I'm happy to, bring you up to Baton Rouge. We can go to different committee hearings and have you do particular presentations. Representative Ted James happens to be the chair of the House Committee on Criminal Justice. He is a wonderful chair of that committee. I'm sure that he would absolutely give you the opportunity to come to Baton Rouge and present. So that would be a big opportunity there. I used to be vice chair of that committee, so I've still got some connections up there with the staff as well to get you all a slot. So just thank you very much for your commitment on this very important matter, and just keep at it. As you work on some really big initiatives like the one that you presented, I can tell you that you're going to get discouraged. You're going to feel like, is all this work really worth it? Is anyone really listening? Well, I'm just here to tell you that this New Orleans City Council is absolutely listening to you, and you have partners with us. The program that you've laid out is not, as you know, going to be able to be implemented overnight. It's not super easy to implement, just like that. But I do think that all of us working together, we can put the pieces together to do it. And Jason recently created this new committee that I know you've heard about, which is the Jerome Big Duck Committee on, I'm probably going to say the name right. It's on criminal justice matters. It's a Justice System Advisory Committee. And I think, and Brianna is a newly appointed member to that committee, by the way. But I think that this committee could kind of help guide the specific steps, like to the specificity point of implementation. So that's just a suggestion that maybe this committee, Mr. President, could kind of help, put all the bricks together as to how we actually get something like this implemented in the city of New Orleans. So once again, I know I was kind of long-winded on this, but I'm just really proud of you guys and really appreciate this presentation. So just once again, thank you, and know that you can call on me for help. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Madam Vice President. Councilmember Nguyen.
Yes, thank you, Council President. And again, just piggybacking on Helena's comment, I truly enjoyed the presentation. I sat the entire time, even though I was distracted with triplets running around the house doing their virtual learning, but I was able, and I made some notes. I'm going to go by my notes, but just in the spirit of expanding relationship, because I heard a lot about restoration justice, restorative justice in the Nourish model. And I know that Troy also runs that. So I definitely would love to make that connection, because I heard some parts that I've heard from Troy program that is in the Nourish program, in the Nourish model as well. But I want to make sure that maybe how we can collaborate and get you guys together on that. You guys mentioned about abandoned properties, and it's not a secret. District E has buku of abandoned properties that we've been strategically looking to, how do we really put it back into commerce? I love to sit down with you guys to help you guys understand what we've been dealing with in reference to ownership. And so when I think Ms. Baker brought up the Schregman site in the East, and I'll just kind of zoom into that a little bit. So the Schregman, those property are privately owned. I'm not sure if the city has any ownership in that area at all, Ms. Baker, but I'll double check. But I'm also aware that the old Schregman has environmental issues in that building. As you indicated, it's been vacant for the past 15 years. And so we've been in communication with the owner. They are selling the property, but they've been struggling to get a buyer in. And what we discover is that they're going to need some help in reference to addressing the environmental issues in that building. However, I would love to sit down with you guys to kind of look at that corridor. I, been in communication with, I think, Stefan with Living School. So wasn't aware that this whole, and I love the lighthouse concept. It kind of reminds me of like a home for everybody, right? And particularly in residential area, I think particularly in the East, we have homes that help cater to a specific needs, like for senior citizens that is more smaller versus the bigger retirement home. But I love the concept of a lighthouse, and I would be happy to expand that model and looking at that Bullard corridor, if it's feasible or not. But also want to introduce you to other areas that I think is extremely attractable in District E that I would love for you guys to explore with us as well. You mentioned about community center in the East. I know we have Joe Brown Park. I know we have the District 2 Community Center off of Crowder, but I also want you to know that the Pecan Grove, which is located off of Schuff and Wilson, a building that's been abandoned since Katrina, that is owned by Hanno. We are working to renovate that building. It's roughly about 9,000 square feet. Something that the city has already looked at and assessed in reference to the cost of getting that building back. And the vision is to convert it into a community center. So I just wanted to put that out as ways of information. And I also wanted to remind everybody that today, October is Crime Prevention Month. So I really appreciate the conversation we're having around Nourish Model. I know that in District E this month, we've launched the Community Crime Prevention Workshop Series. Kind of hope that I knew about the work that you guys are doing, but we still have time because I still got 4 more weeks as part of our workshop series. Would love to incorporate the work that you guys are doing in the workshop series. The workshop series is really designed to engage community to be part of, to play a role in public safety. So our 5th and our 7th district NOPD are at the table, 311, 911, Entergy. So we have several partners that are working with us. Our workshop series come on every Wednesday in the month of October from 5 to 6:30. And we just launched our first one yesterday. We had a good turnout. We had some technical problem, but that's expected of Zoom. But I would love, Ms. Thompson, if you want to reach out to me after this, would love to figure out maybe week 4, week 5, depending on the topics that we're focusing, would love to kind of figure out. But at the end of the day, we have opportunity in the E. And I would just want to emphasize that. And I would love to get you guys to sit at the table and say, hey, Cindy, maybe we can look at this. Maybe we can look at space that we haven't really been used for that purpose. And on the agriculture situation, I believe, Christian, you may remember this. We did do a resolution to reactivate the Food Coalition. And I think that was every year. And so that group is active and would love to also connect you guys in reference to that. We did look at some opportunity in the Lower 9 for farming, and my office is still researching. I believe there's some struggle in reference to the zoning around farming in the Lower 9. And I also heard from farmers that they would need more of a long-term agreement to really establish a true agriculture. And I'm not a farmer. And those are the stuff that we are trying to work with, particularly property owners that hasn't really brought their lot back into commerce. But again, at the end of the day, I am available, I'm accessible. You guys could text me at 504-415-4905. Would love to get you guys involved in the work that we're doing in District E. And again, I truly enjoy the presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Palmer.
Yes, I'm just going to be very quick and brief. Thank you all very much. I just want to say that one of the things I really love about the Nourish program that you've put together is the link between social justice and the environment, and how your physical environment really impacts your social environment, and it really impacts people. And often we forget that. And especially when it comes to, where our investment has been over time. Washington, D.C. did a very fascinating study where they compared and contrasted two neighborhoods one that was well off, one that was disadvantaged, and they showed that the disadvantaged community actually had less trees and was 10 degrees hotter than a well-off neighborhood. And it showed that, and then with that came all these negative health impacts. And I think what y'all are doing underscores all of that, is that we have a lack of investment in certain neighborhoods and areas. And that lack of investment has also created really bad health outcomes and social outcomes, because it also shows that if you have a physically healthy environment and that means trees, that means plantings, that also means parks, that you have healthier outcomes. And that also means socially healthy outcomes, right? And so what I love about what you've put together is you've made all those links. Often people just talk about food deserts.
I don't have enough.
They're not linking all these other aspects that y'all have, and also what that means when you live in a physically beautiful community and how that helps with your overall outcomes. And I just want to thank y'all for making those connections. I would love to have a sidebar conversation with you, Cindy, not to take them away from the E, but we also have some large scale properties in Algiers. And I was on a Zoom call earlier and we've been doing a lot of investments, and we've also been taking very large lots, and I'm finding out the ownership. And so I would love to talk to you more about that. And also the city council can also help in other ways. And we've already done a lot when we talk about transportation and linkage and complete streets, because we also need to make sure that these wonderful lighthouses, right, that you're creating also have links that are pedestrian friendly, bicycle friendly, so that children and our elderly can get to them, right, without having to get into vehicles, and making sure that some of our public transit access is there too. And so I do think this council's done a lot when it comes to complete streets. This administration is very committed in making sure that there's linkages through protected bikeways. And I think y'all are spot on focusing on the physical environment as it can positively impact the social reality. So I just want to thank y'all very much, and I hope I get to meet with you, and I hope y'all look at Algiers as well, that we could potentially duplicate this. So thanks.
Councilmember Banks.
Thank you, Council Vice President. I want to join in and voice my very happy feeling about this. And it's no secret that you've all heard me say this before, that if we don't give children something constructive to do, there's a high likelihood that they may find something destructive to do. Now, that's not guaranteed, but it is a probability that we cannot ignore. So having programs, places, and people that are intent on giving our children structured, safe activities, I think is essential. Now, I hear the noise from people that want to say these kinds of efforts are a waste of time and shouldn't be used by tax dollars because it's the parent's responsibility to do all of this kind of good stuff. But we got to live in the world in which we live. And we talked about this literally at a meeting yesterday, that if a parent has to work 14 hours a day to keep them fed, then it's real hard to be at home watching them doing whatever they're doing. And we have to acknowledge that reality. So any kind of program that we can be intentional about creating that will help provide that structure that these families need is beneficial, not just to that family, but to the community in general. And I stand ready to help. I'm also very, very, very aware of the fact that the ills that face our children and our families, they do not have a district line. While the spot that you're looking at is in District E, and I'm fine with that, and I will help do whatever I can to get it in District E. And if Kristen has space in District C, I'll be glad to help there too. But the ills that face our kids, they don't have a boundary. They don't care where they are. If they need help, then I'm standing here as the councilman of District B telling you I will gladly join in helping that to happen. So however I can be of assistance, put a check by me, and I am glad to help. And again, thank you all. This is quite impressive, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you all so very much for this very, not just thoughtful presentation, but very comprehensive presentation. And it's also scalable, right? So it can work in all districts. It really speaks volumes to the point that all of the young people of the city of New Orleans belong to us. We are responsible for them one way or another. So we might as well invest early so we can reap the benefits of that investment by having prosperous adults. So I look forward to continuing to work with you all, and we will decide next steps. And I will follow your lead wherever we have to go to make this a reality. And I'll also help you lead to make this a reality. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so very much. I hear very clearly. I hear Councilman Banks and Councilwoman Palmer and Councilwoman. Well, I hear they're saying we're ready now. We want to duplicate the model throughout the city. We want to come to the table and see what you're already working on for sure. Councilwoman Wynn over in the E, as you put it, Kristen. And I hear a lot of support about where we may be able to find the funds and coordinate with those who are already allocated funding to do the work, or putting together the coins as they can to do the work. There's so many of us already steeped in it, right? So that it seems that something that we can actually just coordinate, not easily, right, but seamlessly for sure. And so with that, when I hear you say, you know, let's go to the state, let's go to the federal level, we are with you. We are grateful to have you standing beside us, and we just want to hear, while we're all present, while, you know, we have our supporters who are joining us from YouTube Live and Facebook Live, and everybody who is joining us publicly, who I'm sure will leave a comment in the public comments that preceded this meeting. We all want to know, we ask you today, we're asking for a commitment to apply funds within the New Orleans Police Department's budget to include the Nourish model as an investment in harm reduction and wellness for New Orleans' most underserved neighborhoods. Can we get you to commit?
Ms. Baker, you have my commitment to look at the budget this October. I'll look at NOPD, but I will look at everything in the criminal justice system and everything outside of the criminal justice system. We have to constantly look at investing in things that yield real results. There are a number of entities that frankly have not produced anything for the money they've gotten year in and year out. So you have my commitment to do this. This model is strong, it makes sense, and I'm on board.
And I will also commit to do whatever I can to find the resources to do this. I don't want to be pigeonholed into it being a specific budget at this point, because I'm not that astute on where the monies are to be able to tell you we can take it out of pot A and not have something adversely affected in pot A. But what I will tell you is that I'm committed to trying to help make this happen, and I will be intentional in trying to find the resources wherever we got to get it from.
And I'll just add that I already said from the beginning that I was committed to do whatever we needed to get this overall done. And you know, especially on the trauma-informed care piece, which is so important, that we really try to figure out on putting some pieces together there. And you know, I'll just say again that I really would love to get you all with Dr. Shervington, because I think that there's a lot of seamless work that could happen between you all and her, and some of the work that she's already outlined that we could probably start implementing relatively soon.
Councilmember Moreno, I believe that iWest is actually on now.
Wait, I didn't hear you. Say again, Ms. Brooks?
I believe that iWest is actually on the call with us right now.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Perfect. Perfect.
And I would just say, I think it would be really helpful going into budget season to have a concrete budget and timeline for implementation. And I think it would be wise if you had it spread out over like 3 years in terms of how it would look each year, and also how you would gauge success, right? So it's one thing to say, will you support us? It's another thing if you give us a concrete budget for implementation, and how that looks, right? Because then we can just kind of start looking around and seeing where it is, and be a little bit more practical about how this is.
Thank you, Councilmember Palmer. We want to right now say that we do plan to get that to y'all soon.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on, I'm committed looking at all resources, but I also want particularly for the project that you guys are looking for the East. It looks like we're gonna have to bring some private groups to the table as well that could leverage some of those opportunities that can make the project works as well. All right, but I'm in. Thank you.
And the other component of that is we have Brianna Thompson, and I want to thank you, Brianna, for accepting the nomination and agreeing to serve on that Citizen Advisory Committee. And we will be asking this group to present to that committee, right? So we can look at not just this year's budget, but all year's budgets moving forward. So thank you all very, very much.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We really appreciate being here, and we look forward to working with you in the very near future.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we'll now turn to agenda item 2, which is a restorative justice diversion program. And you heard one of our last presenters actually speak a little bit about restorative justice, and you heard one of our colleagues talk about restorative justice as well. Specifically, she brought up our good friend, an expert in this world, Troy Bechet. For most of our existence, we have thought about public safety only in terms of cat and mouse and crime and punishment. We've looked at it in terms of how to make the accused or an offender pay a price with his or her life or livelihood, as opposed to looking at conditions that led to the offense and how to address root causes and how to talk about direct.
I think I just hung up.
And how to talk about direct accountability. In our city and across the nation, we have a case study after case study that continues to tell a story that we will not get different results if we don't rethink how we have traditionally treated criminality. That doesn't mean that there is not a place for the traditional legal routes, which we all know so well, but that deterrence the same deterrence we've used forever won't work for every offender. And there is no amount of money you can impose on a certain person that will change their behaviors. Very rarely in life or in anything is there a one-size-fits-all approach that is effective and efficient for any problem, much less one that is being reckoned with nationally. It is our responsibility as public servants and elected officials to analyze the issues our constituents face in a thoughtful, rational manner with a vision of short-term and long-term results. We must not rely on reactionary sound bites, fear-mongering, or outdated strategies. The very concept of restoration in appropriate times versus simple punishment is rooted in equity and absolutely serves the victims primarily. We'll say that again, absolutely serves the victims primarily. So what I don't want to do is I don't want us as a community to continue to allow fear or fear mongering to keep us in a pattern of bad criminal legal system decisions. Intervention works. Strategies have to be based on weeks and months of data and intentional discussion, focus on the types of crime that the public is actually facing. The more specific we are, the more success we will have at protecting the public and positively intervening in the lives of people. Presenters with us today have done exactly that and do exactly that day in and day out. You're going to hear from people who have been immersed in this work and know far more about it than I do, and have been working in this area far before it was popular. And it is truly time to put resources into working for and with the community to treat problems instead of just kicking a can down the road. So with that, let me welcome a very, very strong panel of experts and community leaders and mentors of mine. We have Judge Calvin Johnson, we have Simone Levine, we have Troy Bechet, we have Ernest Johnson, we have Becky Merriweather, and we have Andrew Doss. Welcome, guys. I will turn the floor over to you guys.
Thank you so much, Council Member. Before I introduce the program, I'm just going to introduce Andrew Doss and take it a little out of order since he has to leave shortly.
Thank you so much,
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Doss. I'm grateful to be here. I served as an assistant district attorney in both Jefferson and Orleans parishes from 2009 to 2014. In 2012, I was awarded the Victims and Citizens Against Crime Outstanding Prosecutor Award. And there's just three things you need to hear from me. First, I was a tough prosecutor. Restorative justice is not simply a nice or soft alternative. This, as you're going to hear about, is about effective community safety. It works. It reduces crime. It invites the community to empower themselves in transformation. Second, one of the most painful parts of being a prosecutor, and the least talked about, is how alienating the current system is for crime survivors. It's by design that it keeps crime survivors out of the process. The first time I would meet them, I learned after a couple of years to tell them right up front the hard truth that whether or not a case led to a guilty or a not guilty verdict, they were going to experience deep dissatisfaction. Restorative justice actually centers and empowers them. And finally, the third thing that I'm here to get across is that one of the factors in the spread of crime is the vacuum in the community that is left when a responsible party is sent to prison and when a crime survivor is left behind, dissatisfied by the current system. Restorative justice puts the interests of all impacted people at the center. I'll hand it back to Simone as they'll present more about what restorative justice is in case anybody needs more information about that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. So we were asked to do a presentation today. We're really honored to be in front of you. We're honored to go after Coalition for Community Connection. There's obviously a lot of resonance there. We've been speaking to, we've spoken now to all of you as council members with the exception of Jared Brissett, Councilmember Jared Brissett. We'd still like to talk to you about this project. And we're seeking your support in having the project be funded through the mayor's office, through city council, through the city in general, because we know that restorative justice can only be sustainable if it's actually if it's being supported by public financing. So I'm going to show a short video, and then I'm going to be having a I'm going to turn it over to Judge Johnson after that. I assume I can share my screen. Yes, I can. Fantastic.
You see it, Simone?
I do.
Okay.
Here we go. Okay. This is a short video given, it was created by our sister organization up in New York City, that the program only deals with, it only works with defendants who are charged with violent offenses and who are former violent predicate offenders. So it just talks about sort of the need and the utility behind the program and what the best practice programs, this program's been in effect for about 15 years, what these programs have done. So this is her video, Danielle Sered.
Can't hear it, Simone.
Sounds like people can't hear it. Can you hear it at all?
No.
No.
Simone,
Okay.
Simone, there's an option on the screen share menu to on the Zoom that allows you to share audio from a video. You may have to select that.
Thank you, Mr. Harang.
I learned this the hard way a few weeks ago.
Video settings? No.
When you click share screen, it should pop up as an option towards the bottom.
I'm not seeing it. Here we go. Share computer sound. How about that? People hear it?
Good.
Yeah.
Very
Yes.
good.
Good
More than half of victims of violent crime don't even call the police in the first place. They prefer nothing to everything we have to offer. The vast majority of crime survivors' pain goes unhealed. What the existence of restorative justice means is that we can no longer pretend we don't know what else to do. As a country, we're really good at punishment. It's passive. It doesn't require people to act, to think. It certainly doesn't require them to change. When we lock people up, we excuse them from their responsibility to answer for what they've done. Restorative justice is a process to hold them accountable. It's a tool. People take turns answering questions like what happened, what needs arise, whose responsibility is it to meet those needs, and how is that person going to do it? It requires someone to take responsibility, to repair things as much as possible, and to never commit that harm again. This isn't about feeling sorry, it's about doing sorry. Things like go to school, get a job, pay restitution, apologize, do community service. Restorative justice practices have been used to address low-level infractions like vandalism, up to addressing the impact of murders on the surviving family members. Restorative justice processes are first and foremost about meeting the needs of people who are hurt. Sometimes the person who can make the greatest contribution to a survivor's healing is the person who harmed them. To come through trauma, we need answers to our questions. To say, my life was never the same after you hurt me like that. Crime survivors want the most safety possibly available. So if incarceration actually produced safety, we would have the safest country in human history. That's not what we have. The core drivers of violence are shame, isolation, and inability to meet one's economic needs, and exposure to violence. And we bake those into prisons to try and keep people from committing further violence. Incarceration exposes people to exactly the things that increase the likelihood that they'll go on to harm others. People who are hurt deserve a process that will help them heal. People who are responsible for crime have an obligation to be accountable for that. All of us deserve responses to crime that actually make us safer. Our current criminal justice system doesn't deliver any of those, and restorative justice at its best delivers them all.
So thank you so much for watching that video. I think that it sort of sums up the program. You know, sometimes a picture or video really gives you 1,000 words. I'm going to turn it over to Judge Calvin Johnson, who was going to be our, sorry. Sorry, as YouTube took over my screen. So I'm going to turn it over to Judge Calvin Johnson, who was going to be our closer for this presentation, but he also has to leave. So we're going to give him some space now.
I am just so happy to be here with the council, but also with Community Connections. That the presentation that they shared was just inspiring. Nourish Lighthouse is inspiring. Andrew Doss said something though very simple. That is that the victims of crime are always disappointed with what happens with the justice system. And the defendants end up convicted, and then they end up with realities that come from convictions that impact them and their family and the community itself adversely. Sometimes what people who have been victimized need more than anything else is to hear two words: I'm sorry. To hear those two words from the person who did harm to them has a better opportunity to heal them than anything the justice system can do. Restorative justice can better get at what happens in our community between those who offend and those who are victimized. Restorative justice can make our community whole. It can make the people in it better. And it can and will reduce crime. That's a fact. And there is just so many examples of that fact that we can present to this council that could overwhelm. That's a fact. it will also save money. But regardless of saving money, and saving money, I recognize is very, very important, saving money. But making people better is at the very least as good as saving money, if not more important and therefore better. So this is what restorative justice can do. And we can fund it. We have the ability, the city does, to fund it and therefore see it having the effect that we submit that it will have. Guys, I'm sorry. Council members, please look closely at this program and please fund restorative justice. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Judge. I'm going to turn it over now to Becky Merriweather and also Ernest Johnson. Ernest, your camera's not on. There you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, City Council persons, for allowing us this opportunity to have this presentation. I want to go back a little and just talk about the purpose of us having this collective coalition. About a year ago, when the People's DA Coalition was being formed, we decided that there needed to be integrated a piece that speaks to the incentives and the criminalization of Black and brown people in New Orleans. And we came up with the understanding that if we're going to have a progressive district attorney and we're going to change the guards of that particular position, we need to go into it with a progressive plan that eliminates the criminalization of those folks, but be effective in the way how we spend our money. So over the last year, along with a number of organizations, total of 75 that created the DA's People's Coalition, the Platform for Youth Justice, and now this roadmap to reform, we've come up with some ideals and some solutions around not only restorative practices, but alternatives to detention and diversion programs that'll be effective and it will be healing without punishment. So I'll just leave you with that, and hopefully as we go on with this conversation, my colleagues will dive deep into what we are trying to do.
Thank you, Ernest, and thanks, council members, for allowing us to come and speak with you again today. We are working on a comprehensive roadmap for diversion from prosecution and incarceration for Orleans Parish. We still have work to do on that. And so we would urge you to stand by because we think it will all be important. But in the meantime, this restorative justice program is ready to move forward. And we would urge that you give it serious consideration in this budget funding round. And with that, I will defer to my colleagues and be happy to answer questions later.
I'm going to now turn it over to Troy Bechet.
Well, thank you, council members, for the opportunity to present. And I also want to thank the Nourish team for the passion and commitment that you are using to break the cycle of community harm in restorative ways. Thank you, council member Nguyen, for offering to make a connection between us. As an artist and as an arts activist and as a restorative justice practitioner, I applaud the work that Nourish is doing. And your presentation definitely landed on my heart, and my heart is filled with hope, the hope of healing, the hope of empowerment, and with love. So thank you all for that. I want to start with one thing that makes restorative diversion different as a strategy to respond to crime. We've heard a lot about healing, and that is definitely emblematic and necessary as a component of anything that is restorative. But we also want to focus on, it also focuses on being survivor-centered. And you've heard some of that both from Judge Johnson and from Andrew Doss, that This is a program, an initiative, a way of responding to crime that centers on the survivor and uses trauma-informed practices focused on meeting those survivors' needs. And we use that term survivor in lieu of victim because victim is disempowering. And restorative justice really works to transform the harm survivors experience into that empowerment and that healing and meeting their needs in the way that they see fit, in ways that support them. And that is central to the implementation of restorative justice. We hear from survivors often that who are involved in criminal proceedings, that the experience of going to court is the opposite of what I just described. It's often re-traumatizing. They feel their voice is silent and what they need is not actually considered. But what we've seen at the Center for Restorative Approaches in the 1,400 restorative interventions that we've done, or near 1,400 interventions that we've done over the years, and what people are seeing around the country and the world, is that when you are offered as a survivor a restorative justice option, you often take it. In fact, 75% of the circles that we have been referred, 75% of survivors say yes. Once they complete the video, complete the circle, you saw from the video that 98% of them are satisfied with the results. We also hear in our evaluations that they would recommend participating in these circles as a process of resolution to other people. They feel safer and their trauma is mitigated. We have research studies abounding, as the judge alluded to, that demonstrate that to us. For responsible parties, those who have committed crime, who navigate the criminal justice system, we know that 50% of them who end up in prison will end up right back there within a year. 75% will be back within 5 years. As we heard in the video, incarceration increases the likelihood that you will engage in violence as opposed to decreasing the likelihood once you get out. We also know that there's financial costs borne by returning citizens and their families that drag them deeper and deeper into poverty. But restorative justice offers an alternative that reduces recidivism. We heard in the video, those reduction studies around the country show a range of between 60 and over 80% reductions in recidivism as compared to participation in the criminal justice system. Another really important thing is that rather than disconnecting the person who has caused harm from the community and the support networks they need to do better, to be placed on a trajectory that improves their lives and improves their ability to give positively to the community, we, through restorative justice, are increasing those connections to community and their support networks. And it addresses needs of the person who is responsible for the harm as well. It identifies and looks at interventions to address the root causes of those behaviors. Restorative justice also benefits the community. Around the country and the world, we see that restorative justice reduces fiscal costs. We know at minimum that the program can pay for itself. The best empirical evidence that we've seen of the economic benefit of restorative justice is a study out of the UK where they found a 9-to-1 ratio of cost to benefit. Converting to US monetary units, that's the equivalent of saving $9 for every dollar that we spend. If we look at local data, according to a recent Vera Institute report, we spend $6 million to jail citizens pretrial because they can't afford bail. The program would pay for itself by diverting 1% of those who otherwise would be held pretrial. And if we divert more than 1%, then we will see significant cost savings. We also know that it costs over $43,000 to jail an adult. If we keep 13 people who would otherwise be sentenced to prison, this program will pay for itself. In addition, diverting these cases will cause reductions in the need for staffing and administrative burdens on the police, on prosecutors, on public defenders, and on judges. So we will see additional cost savings there. Equally as important, and we've talked about this before, the financial and emotional burdens on families. Imprisonment costs taxpayers millions of dollars each year, but it costs some families everything that they have. It's not uncommon for families to pay thousands of dollars on prison commissary accounts, to pay for phone calls, the increased healthcare and childcare costs that they have as a result of incarcerated family members. And we also see in studies around the country reductions in health-related costs for health and trauma services for survivors that are mitigated by their participation in restorative as opposed to the criminal justice system. So I want to talk about our big vision for how it would work. The complete blueprint is going to require a collaborative process to flesh out these program details with many partners, including city government, including the DA's office, public defenders, the police department, business leaders, and other stakeholders, and we are working on that as well. But the big vision, as I said, it would include a receiving a referral from for a case that the responsible party would otherwise face criminal charges. And if both the responsible party and the survivor agree to participate, because this is a voluntary program, and that's important, it's one of the reasons why it's incredibly successful, is that the participation for any party that's involved is 100% voluntary. A trained and neutral facilitator would then meet individually with all of the people impacted, the responsible party and their supporters, the crime survivor and their supporters, and other community members who are impacted, to learn about the incident, what needs resulted from that. What do they think the root causes are, and what do they think the solution to those root causes? What needs to happen so that an event like this does not happen again? All of those things are talked about in what we call preparation, which is the most important part of the process. Then the actual restorative dialogue or circle happens, and the facilitator brings all of those people together. They sit in the circle and they talk about those things. And then they work together to develop an understanding of the harm, the complete harm that has occurred, and work together to develop a reparation agreement for how amends will be made, how to prevent it from happening again. And by doing that, a greater sense of understanding, a greater sense of healing results. During the agreement phase, the responsible party is going to be paired with a trained volunteer who provides them additional support to their family members and community members in taking these actions that they have agreed to during the circle. As the video indicated, this is active accountability. You are doing things that are repairing the harm that you caused. And if the agreement is successfully completed, then no charges are filed. Simone?
Great. Thank you so much for that in-depth presentation, Troy. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the political realities. I know that we've spoken to a number of council members about this as well. We have talked to all of the district attorney candidates, and all of the district attorney candidates are currently supportive of working with a restorative justice project, which is out of the district attorney's office. It is best practices to work with a community-based restorative justice program and not house the restorative justice program inside the district attorney's office itself. We actually we've gotten commitments from all four of the district attorney candidates in public forums or in person and speaking to them in depth. And in fact, many of the district attorney candidates have included it as part of their platform. Another political reality, since we're asking the council to help us fund this program in order to make this program sustainable, which the only way to make it sustainable is through public financing. Oftentimes we're given a question of where should the funding be found. And so the two spots, and I should also mention that Troy had talked a lot about savings. The reason why Troy was talking so much about the amount of money that could be saved with the Restorative Justice Project is from you as council members asking us those questions. particularly Councilmember Palmer, you had mentioned it in your meeting to us about saving money. And so that's one of the reasons why we had included all that data. We went and we did the research, we brought the research back related to that issue. Another issue that I know was mentioned by Councilmember Cindy Nguyen and also by Councilmember Giarrusso and Councilmember Williams is where specifically in the budget are we looking at that? And so we're going to talk about two different places that we have talked about with city council members. It's obviously up to the council, not to us, but we are trying to come up with some creative solutions. One of the places that we were talking about finding that money is in the money that has been allocated, has been transferred to city council from criminal district court after the portion of the bail fees is given to criminal district court. So there's a portion of the bail fees that every defendant pays with bail that then goes to the criminal district court. The sheriff, the public defenders, a number of agencies get this, but we're talking specifically about the money given to criminal district court that has now been transferred by law, Louisiana state law, to city council, specifically relating to bail. We haven't been able to confirm this, but today we heard a number of something near $900,000. This would definitely cover the amount of money that would be that we are asking for relating to the first year of the program. I think Troy will talk about that number as well. And so that was one of the locations that we had seen a possible space. We're talking to community members at this point to make sure that there's no there's no disagreement with us suggesting that money. That dialogue is still really ongoing. Troy, do you want to talk about the first year's project budget? And then I'm going to bring up a budget as well.
Yes, it is. It will cost a little over $600,000 is what we're estimating to run the program. We believe that we will be able to serve between 60 and 100 cases as a result of that. In that way, we will see, it will be easy to get to the kinds of numbers that I was talking about. We'll have significantly more than what I talked about in the cost savings. So it will allow us to provide diversion opportunities for a significant number of New Orleans residents.
The second location that we had been talking to a number of council members on was the legal fees, which the district attorney's office had previously received from city council. So I'm sharing my screen, right? People can see my screen. This time, at least I don't need to use the video volume, right? People can see my screen. Okay. So I don't know if people can see this, but this is the district attorney's budget from last year. And you'll see in this last category, the last category relates to proposed in 2020, and the third and the fourth, let's see, the middle rows talk about adopted and revised in 2019. So proposed, and I believe that city council had given this money to the district attorney's office, but you know, this is Corwetch Nola's do-it-yourself kit to where you find money in the budget. So clearly you're the experts and I am not. But this last category was 2020, and it's $400,000 that was given for legal fees. And the reason why that is important is because we have spoken to at least 2 of the district attorney candidates via public forum about whether some of the major lawsuits are going to be settled or not against District Attorney Canizaro's office. And the answer has been yes, that there is not going to be an appeal that's being taken. So it is our belief that the amount, this huge exorbitant amount of fees, legal fees and legal fees, which the public have been paying to the district attorney's office for them to be appealing some of these lawsuits, fighting some of these lawsuits, that these resources are not going to be used to the extent, are not going to be needed to the extent that they used to be. You see these numbers right here, the 100,000 and the 346,000. So the 346,000 is that which was amended for the year 2019. So that's a huge amount of money that we're talking about just relating to legal fees. We do believe that that amount of money is going to be decreasing, and rightfully so. The public should not be money to be helping the district attorney appeal the lawsuits such as the lawsuit against fraudulent subpoenas, for example, that we know is pending right now, which the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals had decided against the district attorney's office. So I'm going to leave it there. I know that we were only given 15 minutes and just leave it open for questions. I just want to tell you that every single individual on this call has dedicated much of their professional career to victim-centered approaches to the criminal legal system, and absolutely stands behind this program as a method forward for us to actually see true reform and savings in our budget here in New Orleans.
Let me say this, Simone, and to Troy and Becky, and I know Calvin and Andrew had to get off. Not only is there a moral component of getting better resolutions for offenders and victims, but I think the fiscal case on this is just so sound that this might be the one thing in 2020 a Republican and a Democrat could absolutely agree on. This is just smart. And I think the idea of us taking this one area and carving it out and trying to find a line item for it allows it not to be political. It allows us to just focus on the work of delivering a service that is going to be good for our system across the board. So I just wanted to throw out that the fiscal soundness and the moral imperative of this, because I don't think there should. And then when you look at the proposed cost, and you look at, we've spent far more and gotten less in how we budgeted. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues for them to ask questions or comments. Councilmember Nguyen, I saw you press in.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Just for clarification, and I wanted to thank the committee for meeting with me. I know my time, my meeting kind of went over a little bit, but I was really engaged, and I always echo this, that I use restorative justice with my triplets at home. And so I found that it's very useful. It saved me a couple of blood pressure medication, and it helps me with the balance. So I'm really glad that we're now moving restorative justice into our work, and it's time and it's needed. And we got to figure out how do we really embed this in our community, so that way everybody can benefit from it. But for clarification, and you guys probably already told me this, so the bail fee, I think Simone, you say that there's roughly about 900,000, but you also indicated that it is also a share with the sheriff office. So this 900,000 also include the share as well, or is it just for the criminal district court?
I'm sorry for the misunderstanding, Councilman Nguyen. So when it is not shared with the sheriff's office. I was just saying that there's a number of agencies that also get fees, get a portion of the bail fees, but the only amount of money, the only portion of the fees which which city council has to spend due to the new law is the criminal district court portion of those bail fees. So that's the only thing we're talking about. And I also just wanted to acknowledge that your questions, and we had really excellent questions from all city council members. Your questions made us go back and research and find all of the answers. You really had excellent, extensive questions.
Yeah, so then if I could bring back, and I just needed some clarification. This is one of the questions I brought up in reference to, I think it's great that they are going to be voluntary to participate. And I think there was some concern, particularly from the public, that when, as we introduce this restorative justice program, then what type of insurance can we give to the public in reference to an individuals that may have been alleged of doing a crime? Then what public safety factor can we give to maybe that he may be living next to Ms. Jones that will ease Ms. Jones that he is going to be compliant to the restorative justice? And I think Judge Johnson mentioned maybe like a GPS monitoring to where there's some sort of monitoring to make sure that he is or she are following the program.
Yeah, we would be looking at that on a case-by-case basis, and that is one of the so that is an option, and it is one of the things that we really need to flesh out with the police department, with the public defender, with the new district attorney, how that is exactly going to happen. But all of those things are on the table, and that could be one possible way to make that assurance.
Got it. All right, and again, I've always been supportive of restorative justice. I definitely would commit every effort to make this work. I think it's needed. I think it's time. And I think Council President indicated we spend a lot of money on other stuff with very low outcome. And I think it's time that we do it right and do it smart for the citizen. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Nguyen. Councilmember Palmer.
I just want to thank y'all and thank you so much for going back and finding potential resources that we could look at for budget season. Y'all know I'm a big fan. I think Councilmember Nguyen said it best. If that's what she uses for our children, we should consider all of our people in the city our children, right? And what are the best techniques to really make a safer and more holistic approach to our entire community. So I just want to thank y'all for your work. I'm a big fan. What is the timeline for implementation if funded, right? Because we also have to talk about that reality piece, right? Because this isn't currently in practice. So is there a timeline as well attached to this? Should we get it all funded, which I would hope we can this cycle?
Yeah, we're looking at potentially starting the meetings of those stakeholders that we talked about, the DA's office, public defender, police department, city, this year. So because we have the benefit of the fact that CRA has been doing restorative justice work for 12 years now. We have a cadre of facilitators, but we will start training additional facilitators this year as well. So I would anticipate that we could get the ball rolling if we develop this consensus-based memorandum of understanding within a couple of like probably the second quarter of next year. That would be my best guess estimate.
And I just wanted to add that the consensus-based model that Troy is talking about involves a number of stakeholders. One of the reasons why we're talking about in December is because we want to sit down with the sitting district attorney. At the time, it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to us to do it before that process. Some of the model that we're looking at is also based on the police complaint mediation program that was created under the Office of the Independent Police Monitor. And I would mention that at the time, Susan Guidry was in her first cycle as a council member, and she had a seat in that process. So we really see stakeholders as, as broad, and, we certainly would want City Council to also have a part in that process.
Thank you. Thank you both. Councilmember Banks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too want to express my support. Clearly, what we have in place is not working. Clearly, there are improvements that can be made to help the criminal justice system be far more beneficial and cost effective to the citizens, the victims, and even help to rehabilitate or redirect folks that have done things that they shouldn't have had. So with that, I've had extensive conversations with Judge Johnson, and I'm committed to doing what we've got to do, and count me in as a supporter, and I will help where I can.
Thank you, Councilmember Banks. We have, I believe, about 7 public comment cards. Ms. In, so my team is going to come and read those. Congressman John Lewis is often given credit for saying that when we want to change things, when we want to do great things for people, we must work from and speak with a certain degree of particularity. And you all have done that, and that makes it really easy for government to put things in place. I want to thank you for that. This was not broad strokes. This was very specific and was very clear in terms of cost, in terms of how, when, and why. I just want to thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much. And Councilmember Williams and Councilmember Cindy Nguyen, I hope we didn't lose Councilmember Banks and Councilmember Palmer.
They're still on. They may not be showing. They're still on.
Okay. I just wanted to say we really, we so much appreciate your support. And I hope that I'm not stepping on toes here. We part of our group has met with Commissioner Tanisha Stevens already about this concept, but we have still not had an opportunity to meet with the CAO's office, which is really sort of our big desire. We've been talking about it for a number of weeks now, and that's a meeting that we would very, very much welcome. So I just wanted to say that's where we see the next step in the process.
It's impossible to step on toes of council members. We're still toe boots because that just comes with the job hazard. Micah.
First comment, Amy Donaldson. I would like to hear the response from the City Council to outgoing Inspector General's report of the NOPD's investigation into the death of our son, Seth Coiner Donaldson, ejected through a solid glass window on the 12th floor of a non-permitted Airbnb unit at Sonesta-owned Saratoga Loft nearly 2 years ago, October 28, 2018. Next comment, Chad Pellerin. I sense this report does not take into account the number of summonses provided for minor offenses and seem not counted. While many nuisances are not reported for a number of reasons, they often provide a better quality of life for workers and residents in an area. Perhaps police are reluctant to offer summons for what appears to be a waste of time in court, and those that are offered, the accused does not report to court. Can an analysis be performed by NOPD district of the number of summons offered by month and the number of those given to report those offenders that actually show up in court for an arraignment? Thank you. Stefan Pasternak. Can you imagine the day that New Orleans becomes the first city on earth to eradicate poverty and violence? Our hard-earned tax dollars must be invested in initiatives to build and nourish each and every member of our community, starting with the most vulnerable. We have the resources and the power today to invest in guaranteeing human rights to all of our neighbors immediately. It's time we stop wasting the fruits of our collective labor purchasing weapons, armoring vehicles, and constructing jails when we must be liberating, healing, and reconnecting the vital fabric of our community. All our relations deserve to thrive. We can make that happen today. Let us begin by investing a significant portion of our NOPD budget into harm reduction, lighthouses in every neighborhood in our great city. Penny Williams. Nourish's innovative approach to restoration, healing, advocacy, and prevention for our youth is greatly needed, and unfortunately, it is sorely missed in our community. The City Council should partner with this needed initiative. Emily Mickley Doyle. As a New Orleans resident, gardener, and believer in investing in a collective future together, I ask that the City Council invest my tax dollars into the Nourish initiative. It is time for us to plan new ways that we can support ourselves, our communities, and our earth, and the Nourish model represents a vision of the future that I believe in. It is long overdue that we re-examine how we spend our public money, and I respectfully request that my tax dollars not be spent on continuing the militarization of the NOPD to terrorize Black and Brown communities, and instead on nurturing and healing our communities, starting with those who have been the most impacted by structural racism examining both root causes of crime and restorative approaches to healing. The Nourish model invests in healers of all kinds, the earth, which is our home, and the potential of every resident of New Orleans. Other cities in the US are having the conversation of reimagining our world, and it is highly important to me that New Orleans both join that conversation and come out on the side of justice and equity. Rosalind Brown. Nourish and the Lighthouse Project proposals have been developed by members of the metro area who actively engage in various aspects of support for individuals and families. For decades, the Black and Brown communities in New Orleans have been seriously underfunded and overlooked when it comes to equality in education, economics, housing, medical and mental health services, criminal justice, and many other aspects of humanitarian services. Nourish and the Lighthouse Project are a couple of programs specifically designed to be the village that nourishes, guides, and supports the citizens of our city. Once implemented, these programs will ultimately give individuals and families the resources and information they need to be productive citizens and reduce harm and crime on the front end. If we take money proposed for harm reduction within the police department and actually use it to create programs in the community, we should have much less crime and more happy, healthy, and successful citizens. Julie Whiteman. The Faubourg St. Roch Improvement Association would like to express our support for the Coalition for Community Connection Nourish Plan proposal. We recognize the need for food education and security in our neighborhood and community through things like reinforcement of green space and edible landscapes that help improve public safety, health, and life outcomes for our residents. We believe in the plan Nourish is proposing and would love to see it implemented in our neighborhood. Those are all of the public comments.
Mrs. Ince, thank you. And thank you to my colleagues and our presenters today. I really think that this council and this committee has really and is trying to endeavor to think aspirationally about what we bring to the people of the city. Thank you for all your comments. I believe that's our last agenda item. We are deferring Jeff Asher's presentation for a later date. I think we've got enough to digest on, and we can take Jeff at a time and we can have a little bit more bandwidth to embrace that. Colleagues, thank you. I would move to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Banks and Nguyen. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. We have unanimous vote for adjournment. Thank you, everybody.